Hey guys, and now I want to talk about one of my favorite exciting parts of going to Central Catholic High School. This didn't start until sophomore year. Study halls. We had study halls several days a week when I was a sophomore. My memory is a little foggy on them, of who I had when and what how many teachers I had here and there, especially junior and senior year. But I remember sophomore year, I had 3 study hall teachers. And that's when I was still kind of hush-hush. So I had Mr. Mejia, he taught Spanish. I had Mrs. Keefe, who taught English. That was her first year there. She was my study teacher as well, on, I think, one of the days a week. And then I had Mr. Roosboom, a.k.a. Boomer, who taught history. And he also did the Knowledge Bowl, and I knew him from that, freshman and sophomore year. So, in the study halls, when I was a sophomore, my friend Michelle, who was like my biggest crush in summer school, and then throughout freshman year, and into sophomore year, and then I kind of outgrew it after that. She was in study halls with me. So the most that happened in study halls at that time was, hey, write a note to me. So we'd pass notes throughout every study hall we had, because we had to be quiet. We couldn't talk that much. But that was sophomore year. Then junior year, I was more outgoing, more outspoken. I was more singy. And I remember junior year, I had a few study hall teachers. We had study hall several days a week. I don't think we had gym anymore. We had CPR with Coach D. So then, whatever days we didn't have CPR, we had study hall. And I remember I had several study hall teachers when I was a junior. Trying to think back, I believe Coach A was one of them. I'm pretty sure Coach A was one of them. And there was two new teachers that year. Mr. Steininger, who looked just like David Spade. We used to call him Spade. And I go, Steininger. And he go, see you, Corey. He was kind of short. I also thought he kind of reminded me of Martin Short as well, the actor. Funny guy, really funny guy. And then I think we had Mr. Fitzgerald. I think he was new that year as well. And I always be like, Mr. Fitzgerald! I was always a character my last 2 years. And I always have this like phrase for everybody. Certain phrases. And, like every time I see them, I go, a certain phrase. Like, Mr. Fitzgerald! Or Steininger. Coach A was usually like, do, Coach A. Plastic on above Coach A. So getting back to the study halls, I actually got in trouble starting in junior year. And you guys can all guess why. Mark, what do they want me to do in study hall instead of study? Sing! Sing for us! Sing us theme songs! And I'd be agreeing, and I'd be singing anything they wanted me to sing. So then, in Mr. Steininger's study hall, he'd be like, Mark, no singing today. Keep it down. And then some of my bullies are in that study hall, and they'd pressure me, sing. So I started singing, and then Steininger had a big smirk on his face. Detention. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And it was like, I remember he gave me detention on my last day of school. Coach A, I think, gave me one as well for being talkative. But Steininger, on the very last day of school, before we had the finals, I was like, come on, it's the last day. So I had to go downstairs. It was in I remember it was in the Hampshire Street building. It was one of the 100s. It was one of the history. It might have been, maybe where Mr. Sullivan's class was. Older Mr. Sullivan. It was one of those classes. And he sat at the desk, and he goes, I want you to write on the board, I will not be disruptive in study halls. And I was like, oh, come on, I want to go home, And he's just sitting there smiling. And I'm like, how many times am I going to do this? He goes, all the boards, every board. I'm like, fine. I'm like, God, I wish they had one of those, like, chalk holders, like this, so I can, like, write really fast. He's like, and he was sitting there trying not to crack up, like, for a half an hour. I'm like, come on, can I go? That was the funniest detention I ever had. Also in junior year, I remember I got a few detentions from my homeroom teacher, Mrs. Keefe, because I was really outgoing in that class. Really, really talkative. Sophomore year, I had one from Mr. Little. He gave me one, because I was talkative, really talkative one time. And he hosted it, and it was detention where he was hosting, and one of the girls from one of my science classes was across the room giving me these weird looks. We were laughing at each other. Mr. Little's like, Mark, come on, So Jowett was the actual first one that gave me detention because I didn't have my homework a couple of times. That was freshman year. Sophomore year, Mr. Little gave me it once. Then junior year, Coach A once. And then Mr. Starninger once. Once or something like that. And then senior year, study halls were just as fun. I remember I had Mr. Demers for one study hall. I had, I think Ms. Brody, for several of them as well. And if I can recall, she was like in charge of several of my study halls that year. And Mr. Demers was like in charge of just one day. And then she was like several of the days. And I remember if a study hall fell at the last period of the day, and it was in the art class, and I think Miss Brody was in charge of that one, we'd sign out if we wanted to go home like around 1:15 instead of getting out at 2. And I'm like, yep, I'm going home. I need to sign out, go to Big and Beefy, get something, stuff myself. And I remember in Miss Brody's study hall, when we had to be in study hall, when it was like earlier than dismissal time, like the second last period of whatever period of a day it was, it was a really crazy, crazy study hall. I was nuts in it. I was always singing, being weird. I brought my family movies in from kindergarten. Some of the kids were throwing spitballs at me. And, it was a lot of fun. Miss Brody. I used to go, Brody study. Mrs. Brody, Miss Brody. And I don't think she ever gave me detention, though. She was nice. She was very nice. But I remember study halls are where I got most of my detentions. If not from homeroom, by being loudmouthed. Once in sophomore year I was loudmouth. Well, all my homerooms, I was pretty much loudmouthing. But when it came time for study halls, that's where I was all outgoing. And some of the teachers wanted us to be quiet. But most of the kids were like, sing, sing, sing. So, I had to sing. And I paid the price. But those were some of my fun times in Central. Study halls, I made them fun. I sure didn't study.